Okay, this is the pizza dough recipe that I used to use when you guys were growing up. It is, I use it for pizza as well as Americanized French bread. The recipe calls for 2 cups of water, but Wasilla was a way lower altitude than we are here. So there's some adaptations that I make for here because we're higher altitude. So it's 2 cups plus 2 tablespoons. The recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of yeast, which is 2 packages. High altitude, you don't want to use too much yeast, so using both of these is just under 2 tablespoons, so that's just about right. So the water should not be over 140, but you don't have to take the temperature. I just did that for you. I just take it out of the tap, or in this case, I heated it, and it should be warm enough to feel warm, but not so hot that you can't keep your finger in it. My hands are clean, by the way. 20 seconds. ABCs. Okay, here's the kind of controversial part. In goes my water. In goes my yeast. I don't proof my yeast because I know it's good because it's been in the fridge with the date. If you want to proof it, put a tiny bit of sugar in there, let it sit to make sure your yeast is okay. I don't, and I never did when you kids grew up because I was always trying to make pizza dough on the fly. So next, and here's a controversial part, salt and sugar. People say that salt kills your yeast. I've never found that to be true. So step number 1. Next, I'm going to add I just use avocado oil. Back in the day, I just used vegetable oil. And then I'm going to use bread flour because that makes it a little, it develops the gluten a little better as opposed to regular flour, but regular flour is what I used to use when you guys were growing up. Okay, so this has water, yeast, sugar, salt, oil, and now I'm going to put about 3 cups of flour to get it going using my regular beater initially. And it's just like 3 cups more or less. Doesn't have to be rocket science. Man, this is hard to do one-handed. I want it to get to a point where it's kind of obvious that I need a dough hook. But it's pretty soft yet. Oh, now see, if I do it too fast, I'm going to wear it. So yeah, it says 3 cups. I have no idea how much I put in. I can just tell though by the way it looks. And you'll be able to too when you're kneading the dough hook. See, it's about now where it's still soft, but it's starting to pull away from the sides. So I'm going to switch it to the dough hook. You might want to try the dough hook all along. Some people do. I just think it's quicker to use the beater one first and then the dough hook. The total amount of flour is 6 cups. I have no idea how much I've put in. I only know by sight. So clearly that's not good because it's It's still clinging to the edge. So I just keep putting in flour until it incorporates and starts to pull the dough from the sides of the bowl into the center. This is my new mixer, so I'm not quite sure. I think that's better. There's just going to be flour everywhere, but that's just what has to happen. Can you see where it's starting to pull away from the sides? You don't want to put too much because you can't take it out again. And you can add water, but I just don't think it's ever the same. So you see how if you just do it like a quarter cup at a time, you won't put too much. Now I'm gonna turn it down to 3.5 or 2, and I'm just gonna set the timer for like 5 minutes to let it knead, or you can take it out and knead it by hand for about 5 or 10 minutes. So you can see that that looks good, feels good. It's cleaning the side of the bowl. Sometimes what happens is I put in enough flour just to have it start cleaning the sides of the bowl. And then after it's kneading, it seems to get stuck again. That's where you want to take like a spoonful at a time. Because again, you can put more water in if you put too much flour in. But like I said, I just don't think it's that great. Okay, so I'm going to continue to have the machine knead this for 5 minutes. So I started from somewhere between 3.5 and 4, and once it starts going well, I just turned it down to 2. But I think your little KitchenAid is a little tougher than mine, believe it or not, because it's the old ones. So you should be good to go. Okay, that's about 8-10 minutes, something like that. You can see that's not sticking to my hands. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous loaf. I mean, not loaf, because there's more than one loaf there. All right, I'm going to put it back in there. I'm not going to worry about oiling it or anything. I'm just going to put a dish towel over it, clean dish towel, as opposed to a dirty one, because that was weird to say. And let it rise for about an hour. As far as pans go, the kinds that I have found most success with are these type. It's just a cheap pan. It's not very heavy, but it's dark on the inside, light on the outside. That always seems to be just about right. Also, sometimes I divide it up into 2. This recipe makes 2 loaves at least. And my fry pan makes a delicious, crunchy loaf. And this, I of course found at DI. It's a La Creuset. Just kidding. I don't know how you say it. Anyway, it's one of them fancy ones. And it's really heavy. And I find that the heavy one, this heavy deal, it's ceramic, makes a beautiful loaf as well. Not quite sure. And again, also, you can make pizza dough with it. Now, if you have time, raise the dough for an hour after you make it. If you don't have time, I often didn't. I often just made it, put it on the pizza pans, and by the time I got the ingredients all set for it and put it on, it had risen just a little bit, and I was good to go. But if you make pizza dough, make sure that you understand that's 2 loaves. And pizza dough, you want it to be very, very thin. and you'll have to make the rest into loaves, or you can also put the rest of the dough in the refrigerator and just keep punching it down, and after about 3 or 4 days it's going to be soured and it'll taste like sourdough. And it's a really easy way to make sourdough bread. Just a tip. And oh, my chicken bone broth is done from my 1940s canner. So I'll show you that as soon as I take it out. As far as greasing the pans, I'm just using canola oil spray because I have some left I'm trying to use up. You can brush on olive oil, avocado oil, you can use butter. I really find that using coconut oil does not work as well to grease a pan. But you can use bacon grease, you can use anything like that. Okay, I kneaded it for an hour. I punched it down, pulled it out of the bowl. And now I've got it here. I'm going to cut it up and divide it up into the loaf pans. I'm still not quite sure what I'm going to do yet. So this is what I decided on. I decided to use the heavy crock one and make a round loaf in my frying pan. And I know a lot of people have you roll out the dough and roll it into like a cinnamon roll kind of thing. I just keep tucking, and I don't think there's any special magical way to make a loaf. But I just divided it up in half. This is a 2-pound loaf pan. This is a 2-pound loaf pan. And this is just under 2 pounds of dough. So that's just right, I believe. So I'll cook it up and show you what it looks like. So I should have said that I am going to raise it for another half hour until it peaks up over that loaf pan. And then I will cook it at 350 until it's done. So you should get the loaf up to 190, and I find it kind of helpful to take the temperature of the loaf. And because it's higher altitude, I bake it on 375. I used to bake it on 350 in Alaska. But that looks done. If you ever have a loaf that you slice into and it's doughy inside, just put it back together, put it back in the oven, and you can salvage it. It'll be all right. It'll look weird, but it'll be all right. Now, something that's interesting is that's not up to 190. It's close, so I'm going to put that back in the oven. It's possible my frying pan allowed that one to cook a little more quickly, so I'm going to put this one back in and get it back up to temp. Okay, that one got up to 195-ish, same as that one. This one took about a half hour. This one took about 25 minutes. And this one has a beautiful bottom. Look at that. That's from the frying pan. That is weeks and weeks of meals in that frying pan, all coming together to make deliciousness. But you don't want to keep it in the frying pan for very long, because if you leave it in there and let it cool, the moisture mingles with the frying pan and it kind of tastes irony and gross. This one as well has a beautiful bottom. Look how nice and brown. And as you know, you don't want to cut into them until they are completely cooled, which is really hard not to cut into them. And if you want, you can, while it's in the middle of it cooking before it browns, you can open up the oven and brush it with milk or with a egg that you've mixed up. It doesn't have to be egg white, just mix the egg and the yolk together and brush that on the top. You can brush it with ghee, which is delicious, but at any rate, I didn't put anything on them, so they're all kind of dull. But there's our bread, our beautiful bread. Yum, yum. First. Okay, Dad's gonna cut this in half and you can see what it looks like after it's cooled. Isn't that beautiful? That's your childhood right there.
This one's used up.
Okay, say bye, Jen.
Bye, Jen, sweetie.
Refitted my 1940s canner with all new parts, and now it has sprung back to life. I'm canning some chicken bone broth. Right?
Right.
There's my beautiful chicken bone broth from my beautiful 1940s canner.